Why didn't you throw it?
I almost did. Sometimes I get so insane with myself.
Then why don't you throw the cup?
I'm trying to control myself.
Why are you trying to control yourself?
What do you mean, why?
I mean, you were angry. You felt like throwing the cup. Why didn't you throw it?
Because I would still be angry and I would have a broken cup.
Well, how do you know how you'd feel? Maybe you'd feel wonderful. Huh? Why do you have to control every single thought that comes into your head? Why don't you let loose once in your life? Do something that you feel like doing, not what you think you're supposed to do. Stop controlling yourself, Felix. Relax, get drunk, get angry. Come on, break the lousy cup. Ow, I hit my arm. You're hopeless. You're a hopeless mental case.
Hello, and welcome to Book versus Movie, the podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies, and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com, and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hi, everybody.
So if you are joining us because you didn't know that Odd Couple was based on a book, it's not. Sometimes we do a play adaptation into film. So this is a podcast where we really will consider any film that's been adapted from some other source. So if it's a novel, a novella, fiction, nonfiction, magazine article, play, a musical, a song, a poem, we will consider it. We just have a few ground rules. We'll get to that in just a minute, but we are very excited to talk about The Odd Couple today. We are glad you're here. We've talked about Mr. Neil Simon before, but we are constantly, it's January as we do this. We're constantly looking for new ideas because we do try to give you a brand new episode every single week. So if you have ideas for upcoming film adaptations that we can talk about. If you are wondering, what have we talked about in the past? We've been at this for over 10 years. Mm-hmm. So it is an extensive catalog. If you're wondering, what did we cover in the past? There's a list available online for you to check out, meet other listeners of this podcast, and interact with us on the internet.
Yes, we do have a basic Facebook page, but we're much more interactive in our private Facebook group. And we've worked really hard to keep it as a really nice group for the last 10 years. We do just talk about books and movies there. So you just type in Book vs. Movie Podcast Group and ask to join. We are also on Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky as of right now. They are, and you spell out book versus a movie at those places. And then best place to reach us, really, we have an old-timey email. It's book versus movie podcast at gmail.com. Just spell that all out. And if you would like some stickers, send us your address via that email and we will drop them in the mail for you.
And in that Facebook group is where you're going to see the list that Thaddeus, one of our wonderful super posters, longtime listeners, has put together. We did not put the list together, but he took the time to compile the comprehensive list. It is there. And if there's stuff on there that's from a long time ago and you would like us to recover a particular book or movie, we totally are open to that. Because some of the stuff is from ages ago and it's kind of hard to get your ears on. And speaking of which, our ground rules for an episode are, number one, the source material has to be easily accessible. It cannot be, we were just looking up a book and it was out of print and it was $40 a copy. We're not doing that. We want everybody to be able to get the source material. And the movie has to be streaming on a major platform. So same deal. We're not going to go find the obscure DVD.
Mm-hmm. You just can't.
On eBay. We're not doing that. So that's basically it. If it has been adapted from any kind of source, we will consider it. So if you would like to help support the show, you can also support us on Patreon. And it's also a place where you can access some of those back catalog episodes we were talking about.
Yes, Patreon. So we have about 7 years worth of shows on that Patreon wall. You should. We're doing everything from 2021 and then previous to that on Patreon. Some of that we have up there just for Patreon members: Elvis and Me, The Parent Trap, The Invisible Man, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Bad Seed, Sleeping Beauty. Those are on our Patreon wall. And I want to thank Lydia and Susan, who recently joined our Patreon page. Thank you so much. And as we said, there's some free ones on our Patreon wall. We put all the clips you see today, we also put on Patreon, but we also have our old episodes where we recorded basically 2 cans with a string. So if there's one of those you find, you're like, well, this could sound better. Why don't they just redo this one? I'm like, that could be a great suggestion. So that's on Patreon, Book versus Movie Podcast. And thank you all so much for supporting us. Or, just retweet or repost or whatever, or tell a friend about the show. All those things help us.
Come say hi on Blue Sky.
Right, Blue Sky, yeah.
All of that stuff. We love it. So we've talked before, we were just saying before we came on the air that we have discussed quite a few times. We've talked about Mr. Neil Simon, a giant of American theater, and not too shabby of a film career either.
Pretty impressive.
Pretty impressive. If you grew up, if you're our age, you remember the television show of The Odd Couple. We were just saying how much we both enjoyed that show growing up. But it is based on the movie, which was based on the play, which was written by our author today, our playwright, Mr. Neil Simon.
Yes. So Marvin Neil Simon was born July 4th, 1927 in the Bronx. He grew up in a family he was during the Depression that he was raised, and he was very, his parents had a very tumultuous marriage. When he graduated high school, he served in the military, and then he went to New York University and then the University of Denver, and he was stationed in Denver and went to school in Denver. So he started with Your Show of Shows with Sid Caesar. And then he gradually just started writing his own material. And as Margos said, I mean, we could list all of his, but it would probably take up the whole show to list everything he's ever done. But like just a few of them: Brighton Beach Memoirs, Biloxi Blues, Come Blow Your Horn, The Goodbye Girl, Lost in Yonkers. He won the Pulitzer Prize for Drama in 1991. He had a theater named after him in New York City after him in his lifetime. He's a huge influence on so many people. He passed away at the age of 91 in 2018. And we were just talking off the air. We were talking about the Feud FX show called Fosse Verdon. And he's a major character in that story. So if you're interested in it, you should definitely check it out. But a fascinating person. We'll definitely be covering more of his material in the future.
Yeah, we talked about I'm trying to think. I know we talked about Biloxi Blues, and we talked about Barefoot in the Park.
Right.
It's just a very particular kind of American humor that Simon has. You know, you hear a Neil Simon dialogue, and it's only he sounds like that. It's just a certain kind of rhythm, very New Yorky, and very, very funny. You know, even when we have very serious subject matter, he finds there's always jokes. We're always cracking the jokes, even in the bleakest of times. You know, like we talked about Biloxi Blues. These young men were going off to war. Some of them wouldn't make it home, and yet it is very funny. It's a very, very funny script, and this subject matter of today's play and movie, also quite serious, but it is one of the laugh riots of his career. It's one of the things that he's most known for. And today, of course, we're talking about The Odd Couple.
Yeah. So we're talking about the play. By the way, I didn't tell you this. My parents saw this with...
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they said it was a riot, and they absolutely loved it. It's one of their favorites. My parents were really into theater at the time. So it came out in 1965. And in the play, we just have the setting of the apartment, and that's Oscar's apartment. So we have Oscar, Madison, and Felix Unger. And we meet Felix first. And Felix is, I think at the time, oh, go ahead.
No, in the play, we're in the apartment and it's a poker game.
Right.
So there's a poker game now. And what I love, one of the things, a Simon script is so fun to read because of the way that he kind of sets the scene for you, describes the setting, describes the characters, what they look like, a little bit about their background. And the setting is all in Oscar's apartment, as Margot said. But it's a really interesting apartment. First of all, it is a lavish, multi-room, I forget, like 8 rooms.
8 rooms.
In New York
on Riverside
City.
Drive, by the way.
On Riverside Drive, you know, like overlooking the Hudson. And clearly it's seen better days, as this is what the script says. You know, the script describes how it's furnished. Like maybe somebody maybe they even had a decorator at some point, but whoever it was that was in charge of that has been gone for clearly some time, because things are not, you know, all the house plants are dead. Things, the lampshades are dusty, just things are not quite, something's not quite right in this rather luxurious apartment. And it opens on this poker game with these men. How many are there? There's Speed, there's Murray, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and Oscar, 5 men. Is that right?
Vinny is also one of them. He's mild-mannered and henpecked. So I would think,
right.
Yeah. Roy, Vinny, Speed, Murray.
Yes, and Oscar. So the 5 men. And there you get the impression that this is their regular poker game. They meet, this is the thing they do every week. They've known each other. We get right away that these guys have known each other, maybe even since childhood. They've known each other for many, many, many years. We don't know much about Speed or Roy, but Murray, we learn pretty quickly, is a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And we also learn that Vinny, as Margos said, is this
nebbish.
Like nebbish, the little guy who's very much henpecked, but wouldn't have it any other way, basically. And we have Oscar, whose house it is, and he's hosting, and he, all the guys are complaining because, and that's the other thing, is that it's very, very hot. It's New York in the summertime, and the refrigerator has been broken for a couple of weeks, and the air conditioning. So, because again, it's a nice apartment. It had air conditioning, but the air conditioning's been broken. Nobody's fixed it. The refrigerator has been broken. Oscar hasn't done anything about it. Doesn't seem to bother him that he doesn't have a refrigerator. Okay.
And he's serving brown and green sandwiches to his friends.
And they're like, it smells in here. So it really paints a picture of like icky man's face. But Oscar's totally fine with it. They're playing and they're waiting. They're all talking about how they're waiting for Felix, and Felix is late. Felix is the last part of their group, the poker game. Where's Felix? It's not like him to be late. This is kind of weird. Did you hear from him? Did you hear from him? And we get little snippets of these guys' lives. Most of them are married. At one point, there's a phone call from Oscar's son, and we learn, and his ex-wife, and we learn that he is behind on the alimony, and it's not because he doesn't have the money. It's because he's just such a mess and so unorganized that he keeps forgetting to send the alimony. We also get, which I really appreciate, you also get that he really loves his kids.
Yeah.
Like it really comes across like, and all these men actually, for all of their kind of ribbing and complaining, they really love their families. It really comes across that these are really rather dedicated family men, and this is just their guys' night. And Felix is no exception. And they're talking about they're saying a little bit about Felix, but mostly that he's punctual, and then it's weird that he's late. And then Oscar gets a call from Felix's wife, who now we learn is his ex-wife, and we learn that she has decided to end the marriage. We don't really get any insight into why either Felix or Oscar's marriages have ended, except
one of them is a slob and the other one's totally neurotic, and they're both high maintenance in that way, and they don't think they are.
No. So now the men have all learned that Felix has had his marriage end, and they know how important his marriage and his family was to him. And so now they're very worried that he might do something desperate. And they're trying to decide what to do. Of course, one of them is a police officer, and that's when Felix turns up, and he's really in the play, like especially in the play, he's really in a bad way, because this is our first time meeting him, is when he shows up, and he's, and we should talk about the original cast. Our original our original Oscar is our film Oscar, Walter Matthau.
Mm-hmm.
He really knows this guy. Our original Felix is Art Carney of the Honeymooners. I tried to find a clip. I could not find. I
I
really
know.
wanted to see a clip of the two of them in these roles, and I just couldn't find one.
If you find one, let us know. Post it in the Facebook group.
The original cast also featured a couple of the men in the poker game,
Mhm.
namely the guy that plays Vinny, the one who's also the voice of Piglet. I can never remember his name. He's a wonderful character actor, and we've talked about him before. He was in Harper Valley PTA.
Well, when we get to the movie, we'll talk about him because he's in
Yeah.
there too.
So some of these people a lot of the cast actually is they're reprising roles that they played on stage because this was a hit show. So anyway, Felix shows up. Things are bad, and these guys really care about him, especially Oscar. Oscar, they clearly have been friends most of their lives. He's deeply concerned about him, and I think even more than one of them offers for Felix to stay with them, but Oscar insists that
Right.
I've got all this room. It's silly for you to try to get a motel or something. Stay here. Of course, you'll stay here. Stay as long as you want. And then the hijinks ensue.
And
cut to
yes.
But then in the next act, when the curtain opens, all of a sudden the apartment is looking absolutely beautiful. Because Felix is there.
He can't help himself. He cannot not clean. He cannot have any disorder in his space. So he cleans everything. And we should say Oscar shared that place with his family, but the family now lives in LA now. They moved cross country. So it's not even like he gets to see them on the weekends. And so he's desperate. Oscar's very lonely and misses them, but that's not what he leads with. He's a sports writer and he's kind of gruff, but Felix knows that about him and that he does really miss it. And it's something they have in common. They're both thrown out by their wives and they have to now figure each other out. But the hijinks it's that they're an odd couple. They have completely polar different reactions to the world. And how do they make that work? Sorry, everyone. We had a little bit of a technical issue there. Margot's Roomba ate her Wi-Fi router. True story.
So that's the first act is where's Felix? What happened? We find out what happened. Felix shows up. Opening of the second act, I think he's been living there for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And the house is restored to its former glory. Everything is clean. All the pictures are straight on the wall now. The house plants are thriving. Everything looks great. But all is not well on Riverside Drive.
It's Oscar's home, and he's used to, he would talk. Men describe women when we do this as a nagging, when we're just trying to remind you to do the thing you said you would do, basically. But he doesn't have that. He was enjoying being a bachelor in a way because he could just be as sloppy as he wanted in every room he wanted. And he didn't have to think about it. Now he has somebody who has the exact opposite reaction to those things. And so they're trying to figure out how to get along with each other. And Oscar's very grumpy and Felix is very insecure and needy. And it's just the story just is back and forth about how they're managing.
It's really just that. It's not deeper than that, really. The play, we forgot to mention also that the original Broadway production was directed by Mike Nichols.
Yep.
So there's also that comedy mind at work. So it's a lot of comedy on the stage. But it's really there's not a lot to this play. There's not a lot of plot. It's these two men. They're both divorced. And the one is helping the other out by letting him live in his apartment. He's very fastidious. The host is quite a slob. And then we just watch that bump up against each other, for the whole second act. And it's hilarious because the dialogue is so funny. they're really using the set a lot. And that's a lot of that's Mike Nichols. And it's just so funny. You just want to hang out with these two guys and watch what happens, watch what they're going to do to each other. It gets very slapsticky, very broad. They're throwing things. Um, but you're safe to laugh because we've established that they really deeply care for each other. Even if they scream at each other that they hate each other, we know they don't actually hate each other. Um, and so it builds to where um, I think, frankly, rather soon, Oscar insists that start dating. That Felix needs to start dating again. He's so not ready to start dating again, but Oscar is ready to start dating again. So they're going to do that, and Oscar has invited. Um, Actually, he's invited out to dinner. They were going to go out, and Felix insists on cooking. These two young women who've just moved into the building from the UK, named the Pigeon Sisters, and they're played by the same actresses who are playing them in the film. So I'm sure it was delightful.
Yeah, these are the only women that we see in the play. So they're British. They're very chirpy and fun. They're from Chelsea, and they just have a really good attitude. And it starts, and it's a very, very human thing. Like Felix says, "Look, come home by 7. Help me set up, and I have this roast, and then it's going to be perfect. They'll come over about 7:30, then we'll eat at 8. It's going to be perfect." And first of all, Oscar doesn't even come home till 8. And is that really late? I mean, sure, it's late, but it's not. But Felix has a meltdown. He's like, you were supposed to be here. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. The roast is going to be ruined. And Oscar's trying to say, look, get some gravy. It'll be fine. But no. So when the girls do come over, the young women come over, excuse me, the roast is ruined. And Felix is able to talk about his feelings and how lonely it is and how hard it is. And one of them is divorced and one of them is a widow. And so they understand what heartbreak is like. And so they are very empathetic and giving him a lot of kindness, and they understand. But Oscar's grouchy, like, because he wants a date. He wants to hang out with these cute chicks that live in the building. And that's a huge epic fight that they have because of that. And they realize, like, as much as it is really well set, like, they love each other. They absolutely do. They're best friends. They would do anything for the other person, but maybe living together isn't the right thing to do. And so so that he goes and gets his own place. And that's really the story. But it's Neil Simon. So it's just a lot of jokes, a lot of laughs, and there's sight gags, and it's
so funny.
It really is
so funny. Yeah, again, not a lot happens. His wife has kicked him out. That happens before the show opens, and he shows up at the poker game. And then his friend says, "Hey, come stay with me for a while." He stays with him for a while, and then he goes and finds his own place. That's the show.
And it happens to a lot of people, by the way. That's very human. I mean, everybody's been through that.
And at that time, yeah, it was something that people weren't really talking about, let alone laughing about. You would whisper like, "Oh, so-and-so are getting a divorce."
Right.
And we're not going to bring it up. And so, to have it be up on the stage and allowing people to laugh about it, I'm sure was a very, very therapeutic sort of a thing. And then we have a kind of bookend with the poker game. And now it's a very different poker game when it's Felix and Oscar hosting instead of when it's just Oscar hosting with the brown and green sandwiches. Felix is putting out coasters, and he's got ice in the drinks because everything works in the house. And
the sandwiches are delicious.
Everything's wonderful, and everybody's talking about the food, and they're not playing poker. And Oscar's going bananas because all he wants to do is have poker and put his drink right on the table. And it's just so much fun. It's just a wonderful. It's just the writing. It's just that dialogue. You care about these characters somehow, even though you barely know anything about them, really.
Right.
Like what in the play, I don't think we ever even learn what Felix does for a living.
No, yeah. No, Felix, no, in the movie, he says he's a news writer. I don't even know if they mention in the
I don't know
play.
that they do in the play.
In the TV show, he's a photographer.
Yes.
Oscar's always a sports writer.
Which makes sense because, for a TV show, you have to have, he's got to do something after, 13 episodes. How do you
Right.
spread that out? But anyway, so we don't learn that. Where are they from? Are they from New York? We don't know.
How did they meet?
Nobody knows.
Right.
And yet you are sucked in and you do care about these guys and you're rooting for both of them. And the audience, can see both of their points of view and in how they're both right and they're both wrong.
Right.
It's just delightful. And then to finally introduce the Pigeon Sisters, who are these outsiders coming into this situation, and how they react is also really, really sweet and funny, and you feel good about where Felix is at the end of the show. They have a falling out. Oscar kicks him out for a little bit, and then he decides to come back. He goes and stays with the Pigeon Sisters, I think, for a little bit. But anyway, at the end of the show, all is well, and he's gonna find a way to carry on in his way, the way that Oscar was, after his marriage ended. And there they are, and that's the Odd Couple. And it's just so I can imagine, just how much fun at a theater would that play have been. So much fun. So funny.
And Matthau won the Tony Award for Best Actor, and I think it won for Best Play as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was based, by the way, Mel Brooks is a good friend of Neil Simon's. With his first marriage, he got divorced, and he moved in with a friend, and that's where he got the idea. Like, oh, well, what are these two bachelors? Sudden bachelors. How do they get along?
And Felix supposedly is based on Neil's brother.
Yes, who's also a writer.
So yeah, it's just, it's first world problems, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are fine. It's never a question of money. Oscar, like I said, is not sweating the alimony. It's just that he's so disorganized is all. He has the money. That's not a problem. We're not worried. Felix could easily go and get himself his own apartment right away. It's just psychologically, he's not quite ready to do that yet.
Right.
So nobody's sick. We're not really worried about. So we can all just relax and laugh at these two guys. Felix listen, I got a man who understands the power. I'm wearing my apron right now. Not for the show. I actually was just doing work around the house right before we started. But I admire a man who understands the power of an apron. Yeah, just it's so fun. And I love I just it's just that the whole thing is that how much they care about each other. And Simon manages to establish that so quickly and so deftly with so little. There really isn't a lot there for that part of it. Unless you read the script, unless you are actually reading the script, you don't really get a lot of that background. You're just watching the story unfold on the stage. And yet you still get that. You still get that relationship. And that's really what makes the whole thing. That's the glue.
Yeah.
It's great.
And it was very successful. And every once in a while, they bring it back again on Broadway. It's been like 3 television shows, actually. There's one in the 70s. There's one in the 80s, which was 2 African-American men. And then there was one a few years ago with Matthew Perry and Tom Lennon.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that one.
That ran for a couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
So the idea, but you get it. Like, it's very easy to understand, like, what the deal is. They're just 2 very different people, and they argue a lot, and they tell jokes a lot. I love that.
They're fun characters, and each person who has played each one has brought their own thing. When Matthau leaves the Broadway production, he's replaced by Jack Klugman, who then goes on to play the role on Broadway. And when Art Carney leaves, he's replaced by I can never remember this man's name. He's not in the movie. He's a very famous character actor. We've talked about him before. He was one of the poker guys.
Right.
So he went from being a poker guy to playing Felix. So it's a classic.
It's a classic for a reason.
Classic.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely check it out.
let's talk about this movie.
Should we start with the trailer?
Yeah, let me find the trailer.
What's wrong, Oscar?
Something wrong with this system, that's what's wrong. I don't think that 2 single men living alone in a big 8-room apartment should have a cleaner house than my mother.
Starring Jack Lemmon, a hypochondriac, a fuss budget, neater than neat, cleaner than clean. No wonder his wife kicked him out.
Stop that, will you? What are you doing?
I'm trying to clear up my ears.
Did it open up?
I think I strained my throat.
Walter Matthau, another guy whose wife left him. And his pad looks like she left it a long time ago.
Who wants food?
What do you got?
I got brown sandwiches and green sandwiches. Which one do you want?
What's the green?
It's either very new cheese or very old meat.
I'll take the brown.
Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau, who try to enjoy all possible delights of a shared bachelor apartment.
Yeah, oh, yes, bowling. Bowling is a wonderful exercise, Felix, but that's not the kind of relaxation I had in mind. I mean, the night was made for other things.
Like what?
Like, unless I get to touch something soft in the next 2 weeks, I'm in big trouble.
They're together, bringing to all America the laughter of Neil Simon's Broadway smash hit.
Oh, this is really nice.
Yeah. And ever so much cooler than our place.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, it's like equatorial Africa on our side of the building.
Well, last night it was so bad. Gwen and I sat there in nature's own, cooling ourselves in front of the open fridge. Can you imagine such a thing?
Well, I'm working at it. You had your chance to talk last night. I begged you to come upstairs with me. If you want to live here, I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, I don't want to smell you cooking. Now, kindly remove that spaghetti from my poker tape.
It's not spaghetti. It's linguine.
Now it's garbage.
Get out! Idiot.
Hey, Oscar! What'll I make for dinner?
Now listen, why don't you just take a tranquilizer?
Go to your room.
You know, last week or last episode when we talked about 84 Charing Cross Road, and we were making fun of the fact that the trailer gave away the entire movie. Somehow this one does that too, and I don't care. I'm just enjoying it. I'm just watching it and laughing and giggling and like, oh, I'm going to enjoy this film.
It comes out in May of 1968 at Radio City Music Hall. I've never seen a movie at Radio City Music Hall, but it was really fun. No. It's a huge hit. This is the biggest hit for Paramount in years, but people knew the material. I mean, it was a very popular show. So we'll go through the cast here. We have Jack Lemmon as Felix, Walter Matthau as Oscar, Herb Edelman as Murray, John Fielder as Vinny. I think he's one who's been in a few movies that we've talked about.
Yes.
Larry Haynes as Speed. And then we have Monica Evans as Cecily Pigeon and Carol Shelley as Gwendolyn Pigeon. And they've done Disney voices too. They're the Aristocats.
They both were in the Robin Hood, the Disney Robin Hood. And Carol Shelley originated in this era of Wicked that we're now living in. She originated this role of Madame Morrible.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Is that what she's called? Professor Morrible? What is she called?
I didn't see the movie.
I'm sorry, I'm not up on the Wicked. But I do know that she was in it. Madam, I was correct, Madame Morrible. We're making use of New York City.
Yes.
So we have a few extra roles in the film that do not exist in the play, but not very many, just a few little choice things. I love the go-go dancer. Like at a certain point, he takes her to this go-go bar. He takes Felix to a go-go bar, and this dancer is like, she's her own show. She's amazing. They're out on the street. We get to see the movie opens not with the poker game, but with Felix. We were just saying before we got on the air, like if you didn't know anything about this, if you hadn't seen the trailer, you hadn't heard of the show, you're just walking into this blind. The movie opens with Felix very despondent,
Mhm.
wandering the streets of New York, possibly making plans to end his life. I mean, it's very grim.
Yeah.
You're like, what is this? And then from that we cut to the poker game. Then it's that same opening scene that's in the play, in the stage play. Monica Evans and Carol Shelley also both played the Pigeon Sisters in the Broadway production.
That's right.
They're great. They're great. Herb Edelman was in the Broadway show. I think somebody else is playing that role of Murray. And but John Fiedler, who plays Vinny, he's the henpecked one, the voice of Piglet. He played that role on Broadway as well. It's a great. It's a very fun role. He's very funny. He's very, very funny. Speed and Roy, we don't get that much of in the film, just a little bit. But otherwise, we have a lot of stuff on the phone. We never meet the ex-wives. They're always just on the phone. We never meet their kids. They're just referred to, or they're briefly on the phone. But we do get to see Oscar's workplace. He's at the ballpark as a sportscaster and
Shea Stadium.
And there's a fun scene there. So it's really great New York City locations that we get to see, from the kind of slummy places at the very beginning where Felix is wandering about, to, again, this go-go bar. Felix is shopping in the supermarket when the Pigeon Sisters are going to come over, and he's picking out the produce, and a woman asks for his advice on a cantaloupe, and
he offers it.
It's delightful. Look, it's Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. I think this is the second of, what is it, 10
it's
films
like a dozen,
that they
I
made
think.
together?
Yeah.
So many movies that they made together because they have such great chemistry. I would love to have seen Art Carney's Felix. I wish I had some idea. I mean, I do have a little bit of an idea from his later work. He's absolutely wonderful. And you totally buy that these two have a long, 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 long history and know each other very well. And knowing somebody very, very well doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to live together very well.
We've all made that mistake. It's like a business trip or something where you room up with someone. This isn't going to be a big deal. And you're like, oh my God.
You're like, so-and-so's great.
Yeah, we get along great.
And then your flight gets canceled.
And you're sharing a space. Do you want to start with the first clip from the movie?
Yeah.
The second clip. I'm sorry. Maybe this is our third. The poker
It's our
game.
third clip. Yeah, the poker
My cat's
game.
joining us.
I'm in for a quarter.
Aren't you going to look at the cards first?
What for? I'm going to bluff anyway. Who gets a Pepsi?
I get a Pepsi.
My friend Murray, the policeman, gets a warm Pepsi.
They still didn't fix the refrigerator. It's been 2 weeks now. No wonder it stinks in here.
Temper. If I wanted nagging, I'd go back with my wife. I'm out. Who wants food?
What do you got?
I got brown sandwiches and green sandwiches. Which one do you want?
What's the green?
It's either very new cheese or very old meat.
I'll take the brown.
Are you crazy? You're not going to eat that, are you?
I'm hungry.
His refrigerator's been out of order for 2 weeks now. I saw milk standing in there that wasn't even in a bottle.
What are you, some kind of a head?
It's such a great set.
I could watch this for the apartment alone.
Yeah.
I love that apartment. Oh,
I wonder how much the rent was. I can't help but wonder that. I'll look that up sometime.
yeah. We established he's very successful. He's a very successful sports writer. And clearly, I mean, it's got a living room. It's got like a den. It's got a dining area, a kitchen that is closed off and separate from the whole rest of the house. At least 2 bedrooms. And I don't know how many bathrooms, but at least one. And absolutely beautiful, beautiful. Very tastefully furnished at some point by someone who is no longer there. And what can you say? Everyone is so good.
Yeah.
It just bubbles right along. It's so funny. All the other men are so concerned about Felix. Like they're really genuinely
They're good friends.
worried. They're good friends. They're really worried about him. And they're when we meet them later, there's a later poker game after Felix is there, and they're like so happy that he's doing well. And it's just
It's a really good story. We really enjoyed it.
I love the whole like glimpse of 60s New York.
Yes.
It's like the flip side of Dog Day Afternoon.
Yes.
I don't know. It's everybody's white.
Yeah.
There's that.
I mean,
but it is Riverside Drive. So yeah, it's really good. It's really, really super funny. They're just one of the great American film duos, these two. They just are. They made a sequel.
Yeah,
It is not good.
I didn't see that one. I was, and they were desperate to do it.
I know. I watched and I get it, I get you want to work with your friend.
Yeah.
It's no Grumpy Old Men. Like Grumpy Old Men is genuinely super good.
I love Grumpy Old Men.
Odd Couple 2 or whatever it was called. It's just the story's dumb. This is the thing. It's like this. One of the things that's so nice about this is that it is such a simple story.
Mm-hmm.
Even compared to like Barefoot in the Park, it's even more simple than that. It's just these two guys who are different and are trying to share a mutual space. And the sequel tries to jam all this story in there, and like you don't really care about, so it's not good. But Grumpy Old Men, just watch that because that's
one of my favorites.
Oh, it's so good. I love when they're bowling. I love when Walter Matthau is being charming with the ladies and taking liberties that we wouldn't do today.
Fighting the waitress.
But it's I love both of them, but I do have a special fondness for Walter Matthau. I always we talked about A Face in the Crowd. I love him in A Face in the Crowd. Yeah, it's not that deep.
No, I mean, it's not that much story. It's a very simple plot. Do we want to play the clip with the Pigeon Sisters? I think that's number 5.
Yeah, let's play that one.
No, not at all. You timed it perfectly. Come on in. Thank you very much. Felix, I'd like you to meet 2 elevator acquaintances of mine. Gwendolyn and Cecily.
No, Cecily and Gwendolyn.
Oh, terribly sorry. Cecily and Gwendolyn. Don't tell me Robin. No. Cardinal?
No, wrong both times. It's Pigeon.
Yes. Cecily and Gwendolyn Pigeon. The Pigeon Sisters.
Or as our friends in Chelsea used to call us, the Cuckoo Pigeon Sisters.
I like that.
Thank you.
Girls, I'd like you to meet my roommate and our chef for the evening, Mr. Felix Unger.
How do you do?
How do you do? Well, we did that beautifully. So we sit down, make ourselves comfortable?
Yes, you're lovely. Oh, this is so nice.
Perfume.
I want to live with the Pigeon Sisters. I want to crash on their couch.
Me too. I forgot about the parquet floors. He's even got parquet floors. They're so funny and so silly. But you don't, like, as the audience, like, is it that bad that your wife would throw you out? It doesn't seem like it is.
Oscar would drive me nuts. That's just pigsty.
Yeah, but
stuff.
to the point, like, but you knew that. You had to know that when you married him.
Back then,
right?
You probably didn't. They didn't live together.
Maybe.
My parents didn't live together before they got married.
No, nor mine. Huh. I don't know, though. I think you would know about that level of fastidiousness. Anyway, so fun. It's so funny. It's just so much fun. It's such a great escape. Do we have the scene with the pasta?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I have the cleaning the apartment
one. It always makes me laugh. Yeah, let's watch Cleaning the Apartment. We're just going to play clips and talk about how we think it's great.
That was more of a visual if you're just listening to the audio only.
Cannot stress enough that this is his own apartment.
He lived in all of that alone.
You really could watch this with the sound down, but why would you? Because it's Neil Simon and the dialogue is so funny. But the whole thing, it's just the whole thing is just such a perfect combination of the two of them and their skills. I feel like we don't talk about this movie enough. It's so good.
It's an hour and a half. It's really quick. It's just delightful. It's great New York shots from 1968 New York. I mean, just the acting is incredible. The writing's impeccable. The directing is great. The locations are interesting and fun. That go-go bar, I would totally want to go there.
Don't you want to hang out there?
Yes.
I just love the whole thing. I just love the whole thing. It's never, yes, again, Walter Matthau pulls some stuff that would not fly today, but only to a very slight degree, it's just and it's never, it's not woman bashing. Like they're never,
right.
They're never like, women.
They never say anything derogatory about their wives.
Nope. It's just so great and so funny. I don't even know what else to say.
Well, book or movie.
See, the thing is, the play is laugh out loud funny.
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely is. But it's very hard when you're reading the play to take into account all of the physical comedy that there's so much physical comedy that goes on in this.
And the scenery.
So for that reason, I have to go with the film. And the film is except for even the locations, all of those conversations, they happen in the apartment in the play. The locations are just like icing on the cake, that just these little glimpses of New York life in the 1960s, which I love. Mm-hmm. I'm here for all of that.
Yeah.
So definitely movie for me. I'm sure it was just a scream on stage to be in the room when they're throwing the stuff and all that. I'm sure hilarious. But I love this film.
Yeah.
It's just, and you just want to see more of these two. You do. You want to see more and more and more of them. And they were very obliging.
Yes. They loved each other too. They were good friends. Yeah. They loved performing together. They're a good team. It's all good. If you need something, if you need escapism right now, this is a good place to start.
Recommend.
Yes.
10 out of 10 recommend.
Yes.
It is. Yeah. So for me, I'm going to give it to the movie just because, how can you not? How can you not? It's so good. It's wonderful. The whole thing is wonderful. It's great. So we have a really fun choice for our next episode. I'm very excited. Someone brought it up. It's come up here and there over the years. It hasn't come up, I don't think, for a little bit now. But we are going to be tackling Meet John Doe. That's what it's called, right?
Yes, Meet John Doe. Okay. Yes, it's Gary Cooper and Barbara Stanwyck, which
we love.
Hello. And it's based on a short story, and we were both able to get that pretty quickly. So it'll be a decent. So there's enough time to do the next episode. It's not too much reading you're gonna have to do.
And it's also very easily accessible. We will link the short story for you, I think, in our Facebook group. We can put that up for folks. And the movie is also streaming for free, at least on YouTube. It's one of those like
and
YouTube
Roku
movies that they put up every now and again. Yeah, and Roku.
And it's on Roku.
So, So we'll be doing that next.
Absolutely. So as you can see, we're looking for ideas. We've covered songs to movies, musicals to movies, magazine articles to movies. So put your thinking caps on and you can reach out to us. All those places I mentioned at the top of the show. Our email, once again, is bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com, and send us your address if you want some stickers. Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all my social media callouts are at She's Not Your Mama. And where can they find you?
You can find me at brooklynfitchick.com. I'm a Brooklyn Fit Chick for Threads and Instagram. I'm at Brooklyn Margot for TikTok, where I also put these clips, and also Blue Sky. And on YouTube, I'm at my name, Margot Donahue. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for listening. We will be back soon with a new episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We're a part of the Spreaker Podcast Network. Go to Spreaker.com to check out all of the shows they offer. We ask that you make sure to subscribe to our podcast, Book vs. Movie, in your podcast app, so that way you'll never miss an episode. If you want to interact with the Margos, the best place to do that is in our private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and type in Book vs. Movie Podcast Group and ask to join. On social media, you can find us on Instagram and Threads. You spell out Book versus and Movie. Our email is bookversusmoviepodcast, spelled it all out, at gmail.com. This is Margot D, and you can find me at my blog, Brooklyn Fiction.